Find a quiet place to lie down and allow the day to melt like salt from your skin. Let the surface you rest on take the shape of your body. Let clothing loosen where it sits tight. Let your hands find their natural places, palms open or folded, whichever feels like ease. You are invited, only invited, to stay with the breath that is already here. The small, steady work it does without instruction. Notice it. Name it, if that helps. Tide. Tide returning. If you would like an extended version after this, there is a playlist below with longer sessions to fold into your evenings. Imagine now that you are entering a chamber that remembers you. Not a room of corners and sharp light, but a rounded place where warmth gathers and keeps. Think of it as a soft shelf of water, a hollow carved gently from quiet. The air here is the color of late light. It is neither hot nor cold, but perfectly contained. It holds you without pressing. There is a suggestion of tide. Slow, enough to count on, enough to follow with your bones. Near the heart of this chamber stands the keeper. You will not need to call her. Her presence is already woven into the place. She is not a figure of loud instruction. She moves with hands that have learned the patience of small repairs. Around her are apprentices, quieter than birds at dusk, attentive, making small, deliberate motions that you sense more than see. One lays out a strip of soft fabric. Another smooths a line of shell polish as if combing the fur of the world. Their work is ordinary and sacred. It intends nothing dramatic. It is simply tending. There is a lamp, not the harsh kind, but a pocket of warm light that seems to settle low in the chamber, more like a sponge than a flame, giving gentle, even heat. Through the light you perceive a current under the surface, a slow, buoyant movement like someone folding a blanket under a sleeping shape. What holds you here is boundary that feels gentle and definite, enough to keep the world's sharpness at bay, leaving only the soft practice of repair. Start by meeting your breath with curiosity rather than effort. If you would like, breathe with me. Breathe in for 4, rest at 3, and let your out-breath open for 6. There is no demand to reach, no target to beat. It is simply a pattern to return to when the mind wanders. Try it once, softly. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice how the exhale takes a longer, gentler arc. Allow each exhale to be a small settling. Bring attention now to the shoulders. Feel the weight of them against the surface beneath you, the way they receive gravity. The keeper approaches with a small warm stone, smoothed by many evenings of being held. It is not hot. It only remembers warmth, as a letter remembers the hand that wrote it. Gently, almost ceremonially, she places the stone near the slope of your shoulder. You may sense a hone of warmth that encourages muscle to loosen. The apprentices fan a thin, scented fern. Nothing strong, only something green and mild that upholds calm. Imagine the stone there for as long as you like. Feel the rhythm of the stone matching the rhythm of your breath. As you breathe with the 4-3-6, the stone warms and cools in sympathy, and the tightness that hangs at the top of your shoulders finds a direction. This is not about fixing quickly. Mending here is patient. The keeper traces the seam of the shoulder as if smoothing a crease in a sheet. Her fingers map out small, repeated gestures. Press, glide, rest. You might think of a seam being stitched with tiny knots, each knot a minute of attention. The knot does not erase the thread. It binds it with care. Let your awareness travel from the top of the shoulder along the outer arm. The arm is a gentle bridge between the shoulder and the hand. Notice the memory of reaching. Every small action that carried a weight or a greeting today. The apprentices sit nearby, an apprentice with a bowl of warm water and a cloth. They do not wash in the sense of scrubbing, they only remind the skin of simplicity. With the cloth, they trace the line of the arm from elbow to wrist. The motion is slow, like the turning of a page. Imagine the feeling as if someone were wiping away dust that has gathered on a shelf of your own skin. Not coercive, but corrective in the softest way. When your awareness arrives at the hands, consider them as small gardens. Palms hold seeds, gestures, touches, small things carried. An apprentice lifts your hands with a feather-light touch and lays them, if you are comfortable with the thought, upon a bed of tiny shaped shells. The shells are cool at first and then warm from lingering contact. Fingers spread and fold like tide-ruffled petals. The keeper leans in and hums a low vowel, an almost inaudible sound that vibrates like a single thread. The hum is not meant to be heard so much as felt, a resonance that slides down the arm and settles where muscle remembers tension. Return to the breath. Breathe in for 4, hold for 3, breathe out for 6. Each time you follow this pattern, imagine the hum sinking a little deeper into bone. You may notice your shoulders giving. You may notice an urge to tuck your chin or to press your forehead into the pillow. If you notice thoughts that wish to lead you away, small lists, jolts of worry, gently tuck them on a shelf in the chamber, like placing a pebble in a shallow bowl. They are not dismissed. They are simply set aside until later. Move inward now to the chest. The chest is a cave of small currents. Imagine a warm plume rising at the center. Not hot, but steady. It lifts the ribs with a tender insistence, encouraging the breath to expand in a rounded way rather than a sharp lift. The keeper and an elder sound worker are nearby. The elder does not speak. She works with tone. Her instrument is simple, a low bell-like shell that, when pressed, sings a slow, thin note. She touches it now and then, and the note ripples into the chamber, aligning with the plume where your breath gathers. You may find it helpful to picture the chest as a shelf where breath is laid down, like a blanket being folded. With every inhale, you lay another fold gently across your own ribs. With each exhale, you smooth the fold, letting the fabric settle. The apprentices move like quiet tailors, cutting away stiffness here, easing a fold there, always in small measures. There is no hurry. Repair and comfort are incremental. A single stitch, then another. Between those stitches, micro-stories happen, small domestic acts that teach the body how to be cared for. Let me tell you one of these small stories now. A keeper's lamp. There was once a lamp that the keeper kept beside a shelf of shells. It was made of a porous sponge of light, and when the keeper pressed it close to a seam, it offered warmth without heat. One evening, a seam had frayed. Nothing dramatic, only the kind of wear that happens with many motions. Rather than gather tools, the keeper sat and traced the seam with long, quiet thumbs. Each thumb stroke was a promise to the material. I will watch you until the thread feels whole again. Nearby, an apprentice brought a bowl of pale oil, not to flood the seam, but to soften its edges. He dipped the edge of a narrow cloth into the oil and gently rubbed at the frayed threads. The oil did not change the nature of the seam in a single motion. Rather, it allowed fibers to lie against each other more kindly. The keeper hummed as she worked, and the lap of the hum seemed to coax the seam into cooperation. The work took time. They did not measure it with clocks. They measured it with the breath, letting each fold of air be a small metronome. When they finished, the seam was not new, and it did not pretend to be. It was simply stronger in the places that mattered, having been tended to patiently. The lamp continued to glow, a slow witness, and the apprentices spoke in small murmurs, the kinds of words that teach hands how to move gently. As you let this story settle, imagine that lamplight touching the center of your chest. Imagine the warmth softening any jagged edges there, allowing the breath to be less guarded. Breathe with the 4-3-6 again, if you would like. Let the lamp rest there for as long as is useful. Now move your attention slightly down the spine. The spine is the shaft that anchors the chamber's shape. It holds old postures and the memory of many evenings. Imagine a slat of smooth shell running under your back, a supportive ridged shelf that shapes itself to the curve of your body. The keeper positions it with deliberate care, guided not by haste, but by the need to make room. The shell does not push, it accepts. It lifts where slackness would otherwise gather. An apprentice kneels at the base of the spine with a spool of fine kelp thread. She weaves a loop, nothing like binding, but like setting a supportive band beneath a shelf to prevent a sag. The looping is slow. With each thread the apprentice lays, there is a small acknowledgement. You will be held, not crushed. You will be cradled, not constrained. The kelp, once tied, hums faintly with the current. Perhaps you imagine, as the loop settles, that any tightness along the spine loosens a millimeter or two, like a knot finding a tail. Your breath follows. Breathe in for 4, hold for 3, out for 6. With each exhale, imagine the kelp loop resting more securely, the shell slat aligning your vertebrae like notes settling into a staff. You are invited to let the weight of that supportive structure be enough. You do not need to do anything with your muscles to prove you can rest. The fabric of the chamber takes on the work for you. Another micro-story forms itself at the edge of your awareness, small as an evening ritual. The carpenter and the quiet nail. The carpenter visits at irregular times, bringing simple pieces, a small plank, a soft wedge, a nail no larger than a fingernail. He is not in a hurry. He holds his tools in a cloth-lined box as if they were small instruments of mercy. On one night he came to mend a shelf that had sagged under the weight of years. He did not replace the shelf. He sanded its edges, smoothed splintered parts, and set a tiny wedge beneath where the wood bowed. When the time came, he took a nail and tapped it with an almost imperceptible rhythm. Each tap measured to the breath he heard in the room. The nail went in not to pin the shelf in place like a command, but to offer a precise suggestion. This place will hold its shape now. The apprentices watched, learning how to place the wedge and when to stop tapping. The keeper observed, sometimes offering a quiet correction, sometimes only nodding. They left small marks on the wood, honest signs of attention, visible only if you chose to look closely. Imagine that same gentle carpentry beneath your ribs, where the breath folds in and out. It is not an imposition. It is a revision offered to support the rhythm you already carry. Each breath smooths the plank. Each exhale presses the wedge to its gentle snugness. Feel what it is to be supported by craft rather than force. Let the hum of the elder's shell note circle the chamber again. It is low and steady, a thread you can follow if your mind wanders. The keeper steps close and brushes the palm of her hand along the line of your sternum, a motion as subtle as checking the hem of a garment. You might sense a ripple of comfort travel outward from the point of contact, a small warmth that loosens the spaces between ribs. As your focus rests on the chest and the spine, allow your thoughts a kind, non-judgmental space to settle. Some will come to be noticed and then be placed on the shelf. Others will drift by like a small fish in a deep pool. If you find yourself holding an image more firmly than you would like, imagine the apprentices taking a narrow brush and stroking the image lightly until it softens. They are patient. They are slow. Return to the breath once more, and if you would like, follow the counted pattern. In for 4, hold for 3, out for 6. With every cycle, the chamber responds. The lamp breathes low. The slat under your spine adjusts by a fraction. The kelp thread relaxes its grip. There is no hurry to any outcome. The practice here is to allow small attentions to accumulate. There is another micro-story that sits at the curve of the ribs, one about laying things down. The gardener and the little shelf. Not far from the keeper's lamp is a tiny shelf, no larger than the palm of a hand. The gardener visits the shelf each day with handfuls of dust-like seeds, tiny flakes that might be the remains of old tasks or the small worries that collect in the corners of thought. She does not sweep them away, she tends them. With a small brush, she moves them into neat rows, separates what can be used again from what needs to be composted. She speaks softly to the shelf as she works, not to command it, but to name what she sees. The shelf, in return, seems to breathe more evenly. Sometimes she places a leaf over the seeds, a thin, cool covering that keeps them from scattering. It is a make-do shelter. It does not hide them from the eye, but gives them a gentle boundary while they rest. When the gardener has finished, the shelf does not betray the work. It simply holds the items with a newfound order. The gardener leaves behind a scent of damp earth and a small coil of moss, and she moves away without fuss. Imagine placing whatever small worries you carried here on a shelf like that. You might give them the shade of a leaf, one by one, or you might leave them in a neat row. They are honored by being acknowledged. They need only to be set aside. As you do this, the chest softens. The breath that arrives is less anxious to leave. It is allowed to fold into the body more carefully. Now, pause a little longer with the idea of containment. The chamber holds you the way a nest holds a chick, not to keep it small, but to let it grow at its own speed. The keeper does not rush the gathering of feathers. She waits, and she waits with hands ready. You may notice a subtle change in how your limbs settle. There is a slight loosening around the collarbones. The hum beneath your skin grows steadier. Moving forward, your awareness may feel drawn to the places where movement meets rest. The junctions at hips and waist, where the body begins to prepare for the downward arc. You may feel curiosity about what comes next. You may feel the wish to keep the session confined to this part of the body, where the work has been kind and small. Both are welcome. If you would like to continue with the breath pattern once more, breathe in for 4, hold softly at 3, and release for 6. Let each exhale be a little more forgiving than the last. Notice how, with repeated cycles, the chamber seems to sit deeper into the world, asking for less from you. As the keeper moves around the edge of the chamber, she slows her steps. The apprentices gather their tools and lay them in order. The cloths, folded like small flags, the spool wound just so. They do not vanish. They become part of the furniture of care. You sense their presence as a reassuring weight. They are there to attend, not to command. Their steadiness allows you to settle more fully into the interior hush. Here, in this tender part of the session, the narration widens its attention. There is time to remain with the chest and spine a little longer, to let the lamp and shell slat and kelp thread do their small work. And, as you are invited to stay with that sensation, a gentle promise of deeper rhythm awaits, an underlying hum that threads together bone and breath. It does not force the body to a new state. It offers continuity, a slow music made of long exhalations and even longer acceptance. You are not obliged to respond. You are only invited to notice how the breath and the hum begin to align. The 4-3-6 returns if you choose. In for 4, hold for 3, and out for 6. With every cycle, the chamber grows calmer, and the keeper's presence becomes less like an act and more like a background of assurance. This is the point where the work has been small and intimate. There are still places to tend below: the hips, the pelvis, the legs, and stories that belong to those regions. For now, rest with the sense of being held in a warm, rounded place. The keeper finishes smoothing the last fold at your ribs and lingers with her hand over your sternum for a moment that may feel like a punctuation mark. A full stop that is kind rather than abrupt. You may notice a desire to move or to check in with the day's unfinished things. If so, tuck them again onto their little shelf. Let the apprentices take them and lay them out with a soft touch. If the mind drifts toward a task, imagine the gardener's leaf covering it gently. If the body reaches for motion, imagine the kelp band supporting it without need for you to strain. The next breath comes in. Breathe as you feel drawn. There is no strictness here. If you choose, you may follow the 4-3-6 once more, using it like a track on which your attention rides. As your awareness prepares to move further down the body, towards the hips and lower limbs, know that the keeper adjusts her steps accordingly. She will not hurry you into anything. The apprentices tuck away the stone they used on the shoulder. The lamp dims slightly, sending the chamber into a more profound shade of warmth. The elder's shell note lengthens, a sound that might pull through bone if you let it. And here, at the threshold between upper and lower, the narrative draws a gentle line. The chest and spine have been tended. The small rituals have done their quiet work. You are invited, nothing coerced, to continue the journey downward when you feel ready. The keeper watches with a face of patient care, her hands folded, her palms open. The apprentices stand by, tools held as if offering them to your rhythm rather than insisting on a schedule. If you choose to linger, the chamber will hold you. If you choose to ease into what lies below, the path is prepared. The kelp loop ready, the shell slat in place, the gardener's shelf cleared. There is, at this moment, a softness that hangs between action and rest, a connective tissue made of small attentions. Allow yourself to rest here with the hum, the lamp, and the keeper's hand over the central fold of your body. The story of the lower body is waiting, but not yet demanded. You are invited now, with the same softness that carried the keeper's hand across your ribs, to tilt your attention lower still. Let your mind travel to the place where torso meets pelvis, where balance alters its quiet geometry. There is no hurry to occupy this space. You are simply invited to notice its weight and its readiness to be cradled. The chamber below your ribs has already made room. The kelp loop and the shell slat wait like small promises. Allow the breath to guide the entry. As you lower your awareness toward the hips, imagine them as gentle ledges, broad and patient, able to take weight without complaint. The keeper approaches here with a shallow bowl, not to change the shape, but to remind it of its own gentleness. The apprentices move like shadows of care, one with a strip of warmed linen, another with a handful of tiny pebbles warmed by the lamp. Each object is offered as a memory, not an instruction. Linen to smooth, pebbles to align. The rhythm of their motions is small and steady, a choreography of tending. Breathe, if you would like, in for 4, hold 3, and out for 6. Let each exhale be slightly longer as before, allowing the pelvis to settle more definitively into the support beneath it. You might notice sensations of unloading, a tiny loosening at the front of the hips, a gentle opening along the sides. The lamp's glow reaches here in a lower shade, the sponge light pressing a mild warmth that feels like a palm laid in trust. Now, a story braided in the kelp loops will come forward, one that tends to the pelvis like a seamstress tends to a hem. The weaver at the kelp hem. There is a small weaver who comes when the tide of attention is low. She sits at the edge of the chamber with a spool of fine kelp thread that glows faintly where the lamp touches it. Her fingers are practiced in the language of loops and margins. She knows, by touch alone, how much give a fold needs to keep moving. On nights when the hull of the chamber seems to sink a little under the weight of remembering, she unlaces the kelp and reweaves it into a new band. The weaver does not hurry. She passes the thread across her knee, measures with the width of a breath, and ties knots that are small enough to be nearly invisible. Each knot is more a note than a hold, an "I am here," rather than an "I will make you stay." Sometimes she pauses to listen to the low murmur in the space, and, having heard a certain cadence, she lets that sound determine the spacing of her tie. In this way, the band she weaves is matched to the rhythm of the chamber itself. Once, when a traveler's hip had become reluctant after many days of leaning forward, the weaver sat with that traveler for a long while. She wrapped the kelp in one slow spiral, not to bind, but to remind the joint of how to distribute its aches. She placed small, flattened shells beneath the kelp for comfort, and left a thin trail of powdered moss where the band would sit. The traveler did not rise more swiftly, nor did they suddenly forget every ache. Instead, over the course of a few nights, the hip regained its patience. Walking resumed as a series of softer engagements rather than a single heroic effort. As you imagine the weaver at work around your own hips, let the kelp thread be an understanding presence. The band is not a command. It is a suggestion offered to your body's shape. It asks only that you allow the space to be supported, that you acknowledge the parts that have carried you so far. Breathe with the 4-3-6 if you feel drawn to do so. In for 4, hold for 3, and out for 6. Each exhale may allow the kelp to sit more naturally, the band to ease its pressure as your muscles respond in small measures. When the weaving finishes, the weaver tucks the end of the kelp under itself like a bookmark. She does not declare the job done. Instead, she marks it with a soft nod and moves on, leaving the band to do its quiet work. You may sense the same. Something placed with care that stays without fuss, a small architecture of support. Allow your awareness now to travel from the fold of the hips down the front of the thighs. Notice how the thighs receive the chamber's warmth. They are wide planes that remember movement. An apprentice moves beside you with a handful of warm pebbles. Those pebbles are used like a soft percussion, rolled slowly along the muscle in the direction of the heart to encourage circulation and to remind the limb that it is part of a whole, connected by a tide of breath. The motion is not invasive. It reads like a map of attention, a route traced so that the legs, too, know they are being attended to. Consider your legs as corridors that have led you through the day. They hold echoes of steps, of small hesitations, of the times you caught yourself between choices. The apprentices do not mend those echoes by force. They take one stone and rub it along the outer thigh, then the inner, making small, deliberate passes like someone polishing a cherished surface. This polish does not make anything new. It reveals sheen beneath the daily wear. If you would like to, breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 3, out for 6. With each exhale, imagine the polish smoothing the surface, the stones imparting a quiet warmth that encourages muscle to loosen its grip on tension. The breath becomes a metronome for the legs, a measure by which they can resynchronize with the rest of the body. There is a micro-story that nests along the path of the thighs, one about a small creature that teaches the chamber how to ease. The sleep fish and the night currents. In the lower reaches of the chamber lives a tiny creature called a sleep fish. It is small as a thumb and bright as a seam of moon. Its scales are the color of pale foam, and when it swims it leaves behind a faint shimmer that the eye can barely track. The apprentices know the sleep fish well. They say that when it swims close, the currents of the chamber change their tune. One night, after a heavy day of carrying and decision-making, a traveler lay very still. The sleep fish came near, curious and unafraid, and began to swim in a slow, circular pattern around the traveler's thighs. Its path was not random. It traced the outline of the legs as if reading a script. Where the sleep fish glided, the water warmed minutely, and the muscles beneath took notice. Not in dramatic gestures, but in small, systematic sighs, the thighs relaxed their small clamps. The apprentices followed the pattern of the sleep fish with their hands, mimicking the circles it made. They called it a night ritual, not because it produced a result immediately, but because it taught the body to remember the taste of letting go. Over repeated evenings, as the sleep fish returned, it became a signal. Its presence meant that the lower limbs might yield to calm. The chamber learned to answer in kind. You may picture the sleep fish now, tail flicking barely, moving around your thighs in quiet, deliberate arcs. Its passage is a suggestion for your muscles. Soften here, release there. If a memory arises, perhaps of hurried walking or an ache from a misstep, let the sleep fish's path be a gentle eraser, not wiping clean but blurring the sharp edges until they are less intrusive. Breathe in for 4, hold 3, and out for 6. With each exhale, imagine the sleep fish's shimmer resting on your skin like a light press. A reminder that small creatures can teach large bodies how to slow. As attention moves past the thighs toward the knees, you may notice a hinge becoming available where previously there was guard. Knees are the chamber's small pivot points. They have been bent and straightened so many times that sometimes they forget their own elasticity. An apprentice comes with a thin wedge of cork and eases it beneath the back of the knee. An offering of lift, a modest change that shifts load without fuss. The wedge encourages a slight surrender through the joint, coaxing hamstrings to breathe. Move now, if you would like, the awareness down toward the calves and the shins. The calves carry the memory of propulsion. They recall the forward swap of weight. An apprentice rolls a warm pebble along the calf, kneading in the direction of the foot, while another polishes the shin with a strip of soft cloth. Sensations may be subtle: a mild warmth, a feeling of space where tightness used to gather. Consider the feet. The feet are small gardens at the edge of your experience, full of miniature maps and neat ridges. The keeper kneels a little to look at them, as one might regard the soil of a potted plant. An apprentice with careful fingers lifts each foot and allows the toes to splay, as if showing them the margin of their own existence. The toes relax like a handful of small petals unfurling at the scent of rain. There is a micro-story about a crab that tends shells on the lower shelf, and it is here that the feet learn to accept small attentions. The gardener crab and the polished shells. On the lower shelf of the chamber sits a small cluster of shells, each buffed to a smoothness that catches the sponge light. The gardener crab comes at dusk, its movements nimble and patient. It carries a tiny cloth between its claws and a bowl of warm, diluted oil. The crab is quiet, industrious, and it knows that the seams between shells are places that gather salt and history. The crab sets the longest shell in its lap and, working with methodical strokes, rubs away the bristling edges where the sea has worn them raw. It listens between strokes, placing its ear to the shell to hear a faint echo. If the echo is sharp, it rubs more gently to avoid startling the shell. If the echo is dull, it presses a little firmer to coax out the shine. This is work done without hurry, in a rhythm set by an internal tide. Once, when a traveler's feet had been neglected for many days, the crab took extra care. It massaged the soles with a mixture of ground moss and warm oil, then tucked a warm pebble under the arch, letting the weight settle like a small apology. The traveler noticed a mild marvel. Walking later felt less like carrying and more like receiving. The crab did not announce this as a miracle. It simply continued its polishing. Imagine the crab's cloth along the soles of your feet now. Each stroke is a tiny permission to let go, to be cleansed of the small accretions of movement. The toes, freed to splay, release their curled guard. Breathe in for 4, hold for 3, and breathe out for 6. With each exhale, imagine the crab's gentle polishing taking away the day's grit, leaving behind a placid surface that reflects the chamber's light. As the polishing concludes, the keeper offers a small bowl to the feet, a bowl containing the faint scent of sea time. It is not ceremonial so much as simple hospitality. Feet are invited to rest on its rim, to feel the coolness shift to warmth. The apprentices fold a soft cloth around each ankle, not to constrain but to keep the warmth close. The chamber hums in appreciation. Having tended the lower limbs, the narrative swings its attention wider, to the way the entire body, both the upper and the lower, now inhabit a single, slow rhythm. The breathing pattern you have used is a thread. You may follow it as often as you like. In for 4, hold for 3, out for 6. Each repetition is an opportunity to sense how the different supports, kelp bands, shell slats, warmed stones, polished shells, combine into one network that cradles you. There is another micro-story that belongs to this place, one about an elder sound worker whose instrument is made from bone and low wind. It arrives like a slow tide, capable of pulling attention inward without pressure. The elder's bone drum. The elder sound worker keeps a drum that is quiet as the sea floor. It is carved from an old bone, smoothed by many hands until it hums with a low sympathy. When struck lightly, it produces a sound so deep that it seems to vibrate at the level of the ribs and the pelvis, rather than simply at the ear. The elder does not make grand strokes. She taps, listens, then taps again when the room asks for it. On nights when the chamber needs to remember steadiness, the elder arranges the drum near the central column of the space. She invites the keeper to stand nearby and the apprentices to sit in a loose ring. Then, with a small mallet, she begins a pattern that is slow and generous. Each tap is timed to a breath, an inhale, a short hold, and an extended exhale. The sound drops like a pebble through water, and the wave it makes is more felt than heard. Once there was a traveler who could not settle. Their mind jumped from one bright thing to another like stones skimming a restless pond. The elder set the drum down and tapped it in a rhythm slower than the traveler's thinking. The beat was patient and unjudging, and after a while the traveler's thoughts found a place to rest beside each tap. The drum did not force the stillness. It simply offered a steady ground against which the mind might lay down its patterns. You may feel the drum's vibration now under the bones of your pelvis, long and warm. Let the sound sink through the chest, through the spine, and into the legs. If you like, align your breath to it. In for 4, hold for 3, out for 6. With every exhale, imagine the drum's note settling into the places where tension pools, allowing those places to loosen as the sound passes through. As the elder's tapping slows, the chamber seems to thicken with attention. The keeper steps back a fraction, and the apprentices become part of the background furniture, present, gentle, and patient. The lamp's sponge light grows softer still. The micro-attentions, the kelp loop, the stone on the shoulder, the polishing at the feet, have accumulated into a subtle architecture of care. You are held by many small hands, none of them intrusive. Now the session moves toward a wider, more resonant state. The delta hum. Imagine a low, continuous sound that is not a tone in the conventional sense, but a living rhythm that matches the slowest, most tidal parts of your physiology. It is like the ocean at depth, where waves are long, and everything moves in a sultrier, more deliberate fashion. The hum is bone level and breath level. It threads through you, making each inhalation a part of a larger mutual movement. If you wish to enter into the hum, allow your breath to become less precise and more intuitive. You may continue with the 4-3-6 pattern for a few cycles, using it as a ladder into a deeper resonance. As the breath lengthens and the exhale expands, imagine the hum widening beneath you. It is a wide, forgiving sound that will accept whatever tempo you offer. It holds without judging. The keeper leans close with quiet eyes and says nothing. Her role at this point is to be the steady presence that keeps the edges soft. The apprentices, now quieter than ever, hum along with the chamber in small harmonics, a soft scrape of cloth, the faint roll of a pebble. This is not music for entertainment. It is the sound of attention practiced slowly. The delta hum is the composite of these small noises joined into a single, continuous field. As you rest within this field, images may come. The soft bed of water that first held you in the metaphor of the womb, the lamplight pooling at the center, the kelp band hugging the curve of your spine, the polished shells beneath your feet. Each image is an anchor but not a tether. You may hold them as you need or let them blur into a general sense of being kept. Notice how the hum seems to sync with the long bones of your arms and legs, with the hollow of the sternum and the canal of the spine. It is as if the chamber itself breathes with you now. You are invited to mentally scan through the body one more time, this time with less effort and more allowance. Begin at the top of the shoulders, where the stone once rested. Sense how the shoulder sits, soft now or still carrying a small knot. Move down the arm to the hand where the shells lay. Continue to the chest and the lamp plume, feeling the sternum expand and fold like soft cloth. Travel down the spine to the shell slat, the kelp loop, the weaver's band. Follow the thighs, the sleepfish's root, the crab's polishing, and, finally, the feet resting on their little shelf. You might do this in a slow, unhurried sweep, letting the delta hum be the ground and the breath be the vehicle. If you are inclined, breathe once more with me. In for 4, hold 3, out for 6. As you do, imagine each exhale widening the hum, letting it support the soft architecture of care beneath and around you. There is no obligation to feel anything in particular. Some nights bring a sense of ease. Other nights simply bring restfulness as a small rearrangement. All responses are welcome and equal. The keeper now prepares the space for withdrawal. She gathers the apprentices and speaks to them in murmurs, not to fix anything but to ensure the room's attentions are folded back gently. Tools are not taken away with violence. They are set down with the same patience with which they were used. The lamp dims to an even lower glow, like a tide receding to a comfortable hush. The kelp loop loosens its suggestion of support into a supportive presence, rather than an active hold. As the narrative voice grows thinner, you may feel the edges of your awareness retreat into a comfortable center. The keeper's last approach is not a final inspection, but an assurance. A hand passes near the sternum and rests there a moment, neither clutching nor hovering. The apprentices, now nearly indistinguishable from the furniture of the chamber, continue with tiny movements. The folding of a cloth, the rolling of a pebble between fingers, acts that feel more like ceremony than work. Let the delta hum carry you for as long as you wish. There is room here for silence and for the gentle recycle of breath. You may continue, privately, with your own rhythm, allowing each exhale to be slightly longer than the inhale, or you may let the breath find its own length without counting. Both are valid paths toward the same steady place, being contained by warmth, framed by a tide, and attended to by many small acts of care. Before we close, a final small story for the leaving, a narrative about the apprentices and the ongoingness of their tending. Apprentices at the edge. The apprentices are not only helpers, they are students of patience. After each evening's small labors, they do not hurry back into the dark. They set their tools in the same gentle order, each item folded and placed with the memory of its use. They whisper to one another about the things they have noticed, the way a shoulder softened after a certain hum, or how the crab's polishing coaxed a different step the next morning. These are not boasts. They are notes in a ledger of attention. Often one apprentice will remain at the threshold and watch the chamber for a time, not to ensure you are still there, but to learn how presence feels when it is not needed. There is a wisdom in watching ease happen without interference. The apprentices learn that their role is to offer, to be present, and then to step back. An economy of light hands. Imagine them now, tidying, folding and stepping into the dim corridor of the chamber. They do not slam doors. They do not worry about making things permanent. They leave a small token on the little shelf, a curled leaf, a clean pebble, something that reads like a promise. We were here, and we will be again. As they leave, the keeper gives you one last look that is without judgment, only encouragement. Her eyes suggest you may remain in the chamber as long as needed. She steps away, letting the lamp continue its slow glow. The delta hum persists for a while longer, then becomes thinner, like a tide moving beyond earshot. You are left in a warm architecture of accumulated care. If you would like to stay with the counted breath one more time, you may. In for 4, hold 3, out for 6. Or you may allow the breath to be uncounted, broad and easy. Either choice is gentle. Either choice honors the way you have been tended. When you feel ready to move beyond this practice, if you move at all, carry with you the notion that mending is made of small things: a stone, a thread, a hum, a polished shell, a lamp that remembers light by touch. These are the tools of quiet repair. Take them as metaphors you may return to, not as tasks you must complete. The chamber and its keepers remain as possibilities, a field you are welcome to inhabit again and again. A small, optional note. If you found this experience helpful, you might like to save it to a bedtime playlist or explore related sessions available in the playlist below. There is no urgency in that suggestion. It is merely an offering for those who wish to fold this practice into a routine. Let the final breaths be easy. Allow your body to rest in the shape it now holds. Keep the image of warmth at the center. A soft shelf of water, a lamp like a sponge, the kelp and shell that make a support. The keeper and the apprentices withdraw until their sounds are part of the room's memory rather than its present. You remain, held by accumulated attention. When words in the outer world begin again to press at the edges of your mind, they will find you changed only insofar as you have been held differently for a while. That is enough. You have been given a chamber of warmth, a rhythm to follow, and a collection of small rituals to return to. Allow yourself to drift in that company for as long as you need. Save this meditation if it served you. Share it with someone who might find it gentle. Follow for more sessions like this if you wish. There is no requirement, only an open hand and a lamp left dim in a warm place. The room keeps its shape. You may remain in its hush. The delta hum continues, carrying you, if you choose, into sleep or into a quieter wakefulness.